Have you ever wondered, if you're a buyer, what happens if a seller just decides to change their mind and no longer wants to sell their house? What do you do then? On the other hand, if you're a seller, what happens if plans change and life happens and suddenly you decide, I don't really want to sell my house? Unfortunately, in North Carolina, a seller can't just suddenly decide that they just don't want to sell one day. They're contractually obligated to sell you their property. There really isn't an out for them. Now, as a buyer, however, you do have some protection. In North Carolina, we have due diligence money, which means it's basically your get out of jail free card. So that means if you want to back out of the contract for any reason or no reason, you're more than welcome to back out as a buyer. And you just know that that due diligence money that you put up front is going to be gone, because that's their repercussions for you backing out and them taking their home off the market for a few months. Now, on the other hand, if you are a seller and you're a little unsure about, maybe I do want to sell or maybe I don't, what are the repercussions if push comes to shove? I have a buyer, I've agreed upon a price, we've signed all the documentation, coming up, getting ready to close, and then suddenly you decide you're going to change your mind. It's not going to be good. So the reason I'm making this video is because I just ran across this for the first time in my career. Now, most of the time, it goes off without a hitch. Now, I did learn in real estate school years ago what exactly would happen or could happen if a seller decided to change their mind. Well, it's not like selling a car on Craigslist, and I think that's where a lot of people get misinformed or think they can just back out of it. I just had one that during the process of selling her house, she learned that she had cancer. Now, I know that's a traumatic event. It can be an emotional event. But at the same time, her house was already under contract. She had a buyer. If she didn't have a buyer, I would understand more about, hey, we need to put this off. Let's just take it off the market for a little bit and things like that, and then we could wait and see how things go. But she already had a buyer lined up. Unfortunately, she didn't change her mind until the week prior to closing as well. That meant that her buyer, they had already canceled their lease. They had U-Hauls packed up. They were ready to go. They were ready to move in her house, and suddenly she goes, you know, I just can't do it right now. While I do sympathize with people over, cancer and things like that, the problem with real estate is people try to bring emotion into it, and it's not an emotional transaction. This is a business type transaction, and these people, the buyers of a seller's house, they're already planning on having somewhere to live. Now, there are different adjustments that if we were to know ahead of time that, hey, I'm not going to be able to sell a house, then we may have made other arrangements. But when you come up last minute and want to just suddenly decide, hey, we're not selling anymore, that's going to be a hard pill to swallow for a buyer that's already made plans to have a new home to move into. Unfortunately, this meant that I had to have the uncomfortable talk with her about possible lawsuits. In the event that she decided, no, I definitely am not closing, I'm not doing it. What you would run into is that the buyer could sue for specific performance, as well as both of the brokerage could sue for commission that is owed. Because in fact, we did sell her house. Luckily, this seller was able to talk to one of her daughters, and the daughter was going to let her move in for a short period of time until she could get everything rearranged and be able to find a place of her own. So when I informed her and her daughter that the possibility of lawsuit was very real, that her mom could be liable for any kind of legal debt that was to come up because of this lawsuit, a place for the buyer to stay in the meantime, which could be a month or however long it took the process through the court system, any commissions owed, as well as due diligence and inspection fees. Luckily, they both came to their senses and decided that, hey, this is not worth a lawsuit. Let's just move in with my daughter for a little bit until we can get things straightened out. I tried to be as sympathetic as possible. I mean, I understand cancer, and it ain't like you plan these things, but at the same time, you got to see you've got a chain of other people behind you that is relying on somewhere to live. It isn't like, again, a car on Craigslist that you decide, you know what, I'm just going to keep this thing and drive it till the wheels fall off. it just doesn't work that way. Now, if you're thinking about buying or selling a house coming up in North Carolina, I'd love to talk to you, get a better understanding of what the process looks like here locally so that we can find the perfect home for you or sell your house for top dollar.